What does a war hero have to prove when he's already earned 3 stars? That night, in a quiet Virginia town, a man who led classified missions, who's briefed presidents, stepped out of his car, hungry, tired, and in uniform. Within minutes, he was face down on a hood, cuffed, accused of impersonating a soldier. His crime? Wearing the truth while black. But one phone call, just one, shattered every illusion of who held the real power in that town. This is not just a story about injustice, it's about restraint, about dignity, and about what happens when the country finally sees what it's been ignoring all along. Marcus Tate only meant to stop for a few minutes. A small roadside diner, its flickering neon sign swaying in the wind, promised a hot burger and a moment of peace after 6 hours on the road. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was hungry. His rental sedan eased into a space outside Ruby's diner. Military tags glinted under the moonlight. Marcus stepped out, his polished boots tapping lightly against the pavement. His dress blues were sharp, dark navy, 3 silver stars perched on his shoulders. Symbols earned through decades of service in places most Americans only know through headlines: Fallujah, Kandahar, Mogadishu. Inside, a bell jingled as the door swung open. A family turned to look, mid-bite. A trucker raised an eyebrow. A blonde waitress offered a warm smile. Marcus nodded, took a booth by the window. He ordered a cheeseburger and black coffee. His phone screen lit up. Emails from the Pentagon, a message from his wife Sheila. "Still up. Please eat something warm." Outside, 2 officers leaned against their cruiser, cigarettes glowing. Officer Dale Ramsey, bulky and sour-eyed, took a drag and squinted through the windshield. "That's a fancy ride for this dump," he muttered. Travis Holt, younger, buzz-cut gleaming under the streetlight, tilted his head. "Military plates, but he looks like he's playing dress-up. What kind of soldier sits alone in a diner like this anyway?" They didn't call it in, didn't check the tags. They just stood there, guessing, like men who believe their gut is the law. Inside, Marcus sipped his coffee. Jenny, the waitress, refilled his cup. Her voice was soft, casual. "You stationed nearby?" "Just passing through," Marcus replied. "Got a meeting down south." "Well, you sound like an officer for sure." She smiled. Marcus nodded. He was used to remarks like that, used to proving his place with poise, not volume. He paid, left a generous tip, and stepped back into the chill. Sodium lights bathed his uniform in a faint glow. He reached for his keys. "Hey, you, freeze." The voice snapped through the dark. Not a question, not even a challenge. A command. Marcus stopped, hand mid-air, his body reacting faster than thought. The reflexes of a man who'd survived more than one ambush. He turned slowly, hands clear and calm. The 2 officers approached. Ramsey's flashlight beamed straight into his eyes. "Good evening, officers," Marcus said evenly, hands still visible. Ramsey stepped closer, his bulk casting a heavy shadow, the stale stink of cigarettes hanging on him. His beams swept over the uniform, the medals, the ribbons, and lingered as if they were props from a costume shop. "Nice outfit. Where'd you get it?" Marcus held the gaze, steady. "I'm Lieutenant General Marcus Tate, United States Army." Holt circled behind, his smirk wide. "A general, huh? Got any ID to back up that fairy tale?" Marcus nodded. "Wallet's in my left pocket. I'll move slowly." "Real slow," Ramsey growled, hand twitching near his holster. Marcus pulled the wallet with 2 fingers, held it out. Holt snatched it, flipped through, scanned the military ID, name, rank, photo, all real. He tossed it to Ramsey. "Could be fake," Ramsey said flatly. "You don't look like any general I've seen." The words hit like a slap, thick with weight. Marcus didn't blink. "And how many black generals have you met, officer? Or is it just that I don't fit the poster in your head?" No one answered. They didn't need to. Marcus didn't resist, didn't raise his voice, didn't give them anything that might feed their suspicion. He'd spent decades learning how to survive moments like this. Not just war zones, but rooms where his uniform didn't grant him the benefit of the doubt. Where silence was his only armor. "I'm not resisting," he said again, calmly, "but I won't comply with an unlawful order. You have no cause to detain me." That was the spark. Ramsey lunged without warning. A hard grip on Marcus's arm, a twist, a shove. His chest slammed against the hood of his sedan. Cold metal met decorated fabric. The cuffs snapped tight. "You want to play smart, huh?" Ramsey hissed near his ear, breath hot and sour. "Let's see how smart you are in a cell." Pain flared along Marcus's wrist, sharp and immediate. He didn't cry out, didn't flinch. Years in combat taught him, noise invites chaos, stillness preserves control. You're under arrest for impersonating an officer and resisting, Holt added, yanking open the cruiser's back door like he'd just bagged a trophy. Marcus didn't speak. But as Ramsey pushed him toward the seat, Marcus turned his head, voice slicing through the night air with ice-edged calm. My phone's in my right pocket. Call the number labeled Pentagon. Do it now, or you'll wish you had. Ramsey scoffed. Save your bluff for the judge. Phones started rising. A couple at the diner door filmed quietly. A gas station attendant stood still, eyes narrowed. Jenny, the waitress, stepped outside. Her arms folded, her mouth tight. Dale, she said, voice shaking but clear. That man didn't do anything. Ramsey spun. Back off, Jenny, or you're next. She didn't move, but she didn't leave either. Her eyes locked with Marcus's, silently saying, I see you. The cruiser door shut behind him. The stale scent of old vinyl filled his nose. Through the window, Marcus could see the gathering faces, concern, disbelief, quiet outrage. At the station, the night air gave way to fluorescent hum and the sharp sting of bleach. Greystone's police department wasn't built for real crises, just drunks, domestic calls, the occasional shoplifter, not decorated generals in dress blues. He was led down a narrow hallway, cuffs biting into his skin. The holding room was small, metal table bolted to the floor, one flickering light above. They left him chained there, still, upright. Across the room, Ramsey and Holt sipped burnt coffee, swagger louder now. Guy probably has a record a mile long, Holt muttered, scrolling on a tablet. Fake badge, fake ID, bet he's done this before. Yeah, Ramsey chuckled. I saw a guy once bought a colonel's kit off eBay, thought he'd get free drinks at the VFW. Marcus didn't respond. His eyes stayed fixed on the clock. 11:47 p.m. He wasn't unfamiliar with rooms like this. At 23, a gate guard had laughed at his ID and called him Private Tate. At 38, a Pentagon staffer had double-checked his clearance like he'd slipped in through a back door. Each time, he'd let the truth speak louder than his anger. This night would be no different. The door opened. Chief Ed Callahan entered, gray-mustached, tired-eyed, the kind of man who'd seen too much but learned too little. He held Marcus's ID, turning it in his fingers. This says you're a 3-star general, he said, voice rough. That true, or are we all wasting our time? Marcus didn't blink. Lieutenant General Marcus Tate, Joint Special Operations Command. It's true, and your officers would have known that if they'd checked instead of jumping to conclusions. Callahan's brows furrowed. He glanced at Ramsey, who shrugged. He was mouthy, Chief. Wouldn't cooperate. Who rents a car dressed like that? Marcus leaned forward slightly. The chain on his cuff rattled against the table. I offered ID, told them who to call, stayed calm while they mocked my service and restrained me like a criminal. Callahan rubbed his neck, hesitated. Fine, he muttered. One call. But if this is a stunt, you're not walking out of here. He slid a desk phone across the table. Marcus didn't touch it yet. He looked at Ramsey and Holt. Their grins had faded. You'll want to hear this, he said. Put it on speaker. He dialed. Each beep deliberate. Each second a weight dropped onto the room. A voice answered, crisp and alert. Office of the Deputy Secretary. Marcus spoke clearly. This is General Tate. I need Secretary Hargrove, priority 1. There was a pause. Then, yes, sir. Connecting now. Ramsey smirked, but something in his eyes flickered. Holt shifted against the wall. Then the speaker crackled to life. Elaine Hargrove's voice filled the room, clipped, powerful, unmistakably in command. Marcus? Where the hell are you? No greetings, no pleasantries, just urgency. Marcus's reply was surgical. Greystone, Virginia, local PD arrested for impersonation, cuffed, detained, no due process. I need this resolved now. Silence. Heavy. Then, what? Her tone turned nuclear. The line stayed open, but the silence inside the room deepened. A taut, breathless kind of quiet. Then Secretary Elaine Hargrove spoke again, and this time her voice carried the weight of the Pentagon. Who am I speaking to? Chief Callahan straightened like a child caught cheating. His voice wavered. Chief Ed Callahan, ma'am. Greystone Police. She didn't miss a beat. Listen closely, Chief. You have a decorated general in custody. A man who's briefed presidents, who's led missions, so classified they don't even have names. A man who has more stripes on his record than most of your department has years of service. You arrested him. Why? Because your officers couldn't read a military ID? Or because they couldn't imagine a black man could outrank them? No one spoke. Even the air seemed still. "Release him. Now, or I'm sending a team from Bragg and informing the governor within the hour." "Am I crystal clear?" Callahan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Ramsey, once smug, now stared at the floor, coffee cup trembling in his grip. Holt backed toward the wall, face pale, breath shallow. The cockiness had drained out of them, fast as blood from a wound. Callahan scrambled, waving a hand. "Get those cuffs off. Now!" Holt fumbled with the keys, dropped them, cursed under his breath. The metal rang out against the floor. Finally, he unlocked the chains. The cuffs clanged onto the table. Marcus stood slowly. The stiffness in his shoulders didn't come from the hours in the chair. It came from decades of carrying weight no one else could see. He rubbed his wrists, eyes locked on the men before him. Callahan stepped forward, holding out the wallet with two hands like a peace offering. We're sorry, General. This was a mistake, a bad one." Marcus took the wallet. His voice was quiet, but it cut deeper than any yell could. "A mistake is getting my name wrong," he said. "This was a choice. Your officers chose to ignore my ID, my rank, my truth, because I didn't match the image of power in their heads. That's not a mistake, Chief. That's a failure, and it's yours." No one replied. He turned toward the door. Each step echoed, not loud, but heavy with judgment. He pushed through the exit. The night air greeted him again, cool and sharp. His car sat alone under the flickering street lamp. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and let it hum. But he didn't drive right away. Instead, he stared straight ahead, letting his mind process it all. Ramsey's snarl, Holt's laugh, Jenny's voice, trembling but brave, the cold metal biting into his skin, the helplessness, the restraint. Not the first time, maybe not the last. But this time, people had seen. His phone buzzed in the console. Sheila, Warren, old squadmates. Texts coming in fast now, alerts from the Pentagon, missed calls from reporters, social media mentions climbing by the second. But he wasn't ready to talk, not yet. By morning, the footage was everywhere. The diner parking lot, Ramsey's hand twisting Marcus's arm, the sneer, the accusation, Marcus's calm refusal to bend. The story exploded, first on X, then TikTok, Instagram. Hashtags, General Tate, Justice for Marcus, still serving. Local news picked it up, then CNN. By nightfall, even Fox News had to mention it, albeit wrapped in layers of context and pending investigation. But the core truth couldn't be hidden. A black general, a war hero, humiliated in his own uniform, because two men with badges couldn't imagine he was real. At Ruby's, the booths overflowed, not with customers but cameras, reporters, locals holding coffees and questions. Jenny stood behind the counter, hands shaking but voice steady. "I told Dale he was wrong," she said, streaming live to thousands. "That man was polite, kind, quiet, and they treated him like dirt because of his skin." Protests bloomed across the county. Outside Greystone PD, signs read, "See us, don't cuff us. Power doesn't always look how you expect. We salute General Tate." Meanwhile, inside the department, the cracks deepened. Internal Affairs opened a file. The Pentagon sent investigators. Virginia's Attorney General issued a public statement. "We are reviewing conduct that may reflect systemic bias." Behind closed doors, Ramsey and Holt were suspended, not just for use of force, but for procedural negligence, racial profiling, and conduct unbecoming of the badge. And still, Marcus stayed quiet. He didn't grant interviews, didn't tweet, didn't seek revenge. But in his stillness, he spoke louder than any press conference. At Fort Bragg, Marcus arrived to quiet salutes and lingering stares. Colonel Denise Warren met him outside the briefing room. Her hug was brief but fierce. "You good, sir?" she asked. Marcus nodded once. "Takes more than a bad cop to break me." The meeting went on. Budget briefings, drone specs, updated threat maps. The war machine didn't pause for hurt pride or viral videos. But something in the room had changed. Every eye that met Marcus's held something different now. Not just respect for his stars, but a deeper kind. The kind born of clarity, of seeing what the uniform couldn't always shield. Later, a young black lieutenant approached him, voice low. "How do you keep going, sir? After that?" Marcus looked at the young man and saw his younger self, raw, proud, determined, unsure. "You don't just go on," Marcus said. "You carve space. You make them see you. Not their fear, not their ignorance. Just you. Every step forward teaches them. Whether they want to learn or not." He left the conversation at that. But the country wasn't done talking. That night, the leaked body cam footage hit the internet. Ramsey's voice sneering, "You don't look like any general I know." Holt's laugh, sharp and ugly, "Could be fake." The snap of cuffs, Marcus's steady voice, "You're making a mistake, call Fort Bragg." The video ricocheted through every platform. Cable news debated it, talk shows dissected it, editorials flooded in, from the Washington Post to niche military newsletters. Even those who tried to downplay it couldn't ignore it. America had seen this story before, too many times. But this time, it wore 3 stars and stood straight-backed in dress blues. By the end of the week, the Department of Defense announced a formal audit into law enforcement interactions with active-duty personnel, especially black service members. Old stories surfaced. A major in Texas questioned in front of his children. A Marine sergeant in Georgia pulled over while in uniform and asked, "You sure this ain't stolen?" The dots began to connect, slowly, then all at once. In Greystone, the town's calm shattered. Protests spilled from sidewalks into streets. People held up signs with Marcus's face, stern, proud, unbent, under the caption, "Dignity looks like this." Heroes wear truth, still serving even when betrayed. Jenny kept talking. She didn't stop. Local news followed her everywhere. She gave interviews from behind the same diner counter she'd worked for 12 years. "People say racism isn't real anymore," she told one reporter. "Well, I watched it happen. I watched a man be arrested for being something too big for 2 little minds to handle. That ain't law. That's fear." Ramsey stayed home. His blinds never opened. Holt deactivated all his social media, but not before screenshots surfaced. Years of posts calling protesters thugs, mocking diversity hires, quoting fringe blogs on law and order. The backlash was swift, unforgiving. The governor spoke at a press conference. What happened to General Tate was not just wrong, it was revealing. It forces us to ask, who do we trust in uniform? And why? The Greystone PD tried damage control, a statement vague and defensive. "We regret the incident, committed to retraining, reviewing procedures." But the public wasn't buying it. Too much had been seen. Too much had been said. And Marcus, who had said almost nothing, had become a symbol anyway. Not because he shouted, but because he didn't need to. His silence was heavier than any rebuttal, his calm more damning than rage. In churches, pastors told their congregations, "You want to know grace? Look at that man who didn't spit back hate." In classrooms, teachers used the story to teach bias, history, strength. In households, black parents pointed to Marcus and said to their children, "This is what strength looks like. Not loud, not cruel, but standing." The Pentagon didn't flinch. Secretary Hargrove herself called Virginia's Attorney General and demanded a civil rights review. Within 10 days, the Department of Justice sent representatives to Greystone, not to talk, to investigate. And Marcus? He still hadn't spoken publicly. When asked by CNN for an exclusive, he simply replied, "I don't need to explain what everyone already saw." The weight of that silence rippled further than any soundbite ever could. Justice, when it finally moved, didn't roar. It didn't come with a dramatic gavel or sudden applause. It crept in slowly, through meetings, memos, decisions made behind thick doors, and then it hit like a quiet wave, reshaping everything in its path. Ramsey and Holt were formally dismissed, not just suspended, gone. Their records, once protected by silence and seniority, were laid bare. Dozens of complaints, patterns of profiling, use of force brushed aside until now. The body cam footage had been the final nail. There was no spinning it, no more misunderstanding excuses. The nation had watched it, replayed it, shared it millions of times. Marcus didn't celebrate. He didn't post a statement, didn't stand behind a podium or smile for the cameras. But he watched. He noticed. He saw the new chief brought in from Philadelphia, a black woman with a no-nonsense record and a plan that didn't start with PR, but with accountability. Bias training was made mandatory. Community review boards were established. Officers were required to log interactions with service members. Every stop, every reason, every word. Schools in Greystone added a new unit to their civics curriculum. What dignity in public service really means. Churches held open forums, not lectures, conversations. Black residents shared stories. White residents listened, some for the first time. And still, Marcus didn't go back. Not to Greystone, not to the diner. He didn't need to. The story had left his hands. It had become something bigger. A conversation, a reckoning, a mirror held up to a system too used to looking away. Jenny called him 2 weeks later. Her voice crackled through the speakerphone, bright with quiet pride. "They're retraining every cop, sir," she said. "Ramsey's gone. Holt's pushing papers in some desk job upstate. And people here, they're talking. I mean really talking." Marcus smiled, leaning back in his chair at Fort Bragg. "You did good, Jenny," he said. "More than you know." A pause. "People ask about you, you know. Customers, strangers, soldiers. They say they've never seen someone stay that calm, that clear." Marcus exhaled softly. "It wasn't clarity," he said. "It was restraint. A different kind of battle." He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. Some scars don't need to be retold. They just need to be honored. Weeks passed, then months. At Bragg, Marcus returned to the work that mattered most, mentoring the next generation. He sat across from a young captain one morning. Bright, brilliant, but shaken. "They'll test me," she said. "Because of how I look, how I talk, the way I lead." Marcus didn't disagree. He just nodded. "They will. Let them." She blinked. "You're not just passing through," he said. "You're building the road. One step, one stare down, one win at a time. Stand tall. They'll learn." Later that night, Sheila showed Marcus a viral post on her phone, a photo taken outside Ruby's. Marcus, in his blues, standing by the sedan, quiet but unbroken. Caption: "Heroes don't bend." He shook his head. She touched his hand. She touched his hand, firm. "They see you, Marcus. Let them." They did. They saw more than just a general. They saw a man who had every right to rage, but chose dignity. Who could have demanded revenge, but chose truth. Who could have broken, but stood instead. In towns like Greystone, the scars didn't vanish. Racism didn't dissolve under a hashtag. But now people had a name, a story, a symbol, a man. And sometimes that's where healing starts. Not with fireworks, but with memory. And memory that doesn't fade. Marcus never returned to Greystone. Not because he was afraid, not because there was nothing left to say, but because the story no longer belonged to him. It belonged to Jenny, who still poured coffee at Ruby's, now with a sharper spine and a voice people actually listened to. It belonged to the high school students, sitting in classrooms, learning not just about dates and wars, but about dignity and how it speaks louder than pride. It belonged to the officers still wearing badges, but wearing them differently now. Some out of guilt, some out of awakening, all out of necessity. Greystone had changed, not perfectly, not completely, but undeniably, and Marcus, he carried it with him. Not as bitterness, but as fuel. At Fort Bragg, his days resumed their rhythm. Strategy briefings, personnel reviews, early morning runs. But the stares lasted longer now, the salutes were crisper, and when he walked into a room, people didn't just see a man of rank. They saw a man who had stood still and stood tall, even when everything around him tried to reduce him. He didn't talk about the night much. Not even to Sheila. But every now and then she caught him quiet, eyes distant, fingers lightly brushing the wrist where the cuffs once closed. She never pushed, just placed her hand gently over his. "You're not alone in it," she would say. And he knew. He'd never really been. Because somewhere across the country, a young officer was telling her unit, "I know who I am, even if they don't." Because somewhere a diner waitress was holding her ground and telling a local official, "No, we're not going back to how it was." Because somewhere a teenager was watching that footage and thinking, if he didn't break, maybe I don't have to either. That was the legacy. Not headlines, not speaking tours, not medals, but ripples. Not every battle is fought with fists. Not every victory is visible. Some live in whispers, in changed minds, in the quiet shift of what a town accepts and what it no longer excuses. Ramsey faded into obscurity, his name mentioned only in low tones, a cautionary tale. Holt moved away. No fanfare, no goodbye. The new police chief, firm but fair, rewrote the department's playbook. Accountability, oversight, transparency. Words that once felt performative now came with teeth. Churches kept talking, so did schools. Even the local veterans group, once skeptical, invited Marcus to speak. He declined the invite, but he sent a message: serve with honor, protect with humility, and never forget who you answer to. Months later, a journalist asked Marcus during a private off-the-record visit, "If you could go back, would you do anything differently?" Marcus paused, gaze steady. "I would have eaten faster," he said. Then, after a breath, "But no, nothing else. I didn't break, and they learned. Maybe not all of them, but enough." The reporter didn't quote him, didn't need to, because the world already knew what mattered. And still, the story grew. A mural appeared near Ruby's, 3 stars. A set of cuffs cracked open. A single phrase, "Stand still." A poet read his name on stage at a veterans event. A civil rights group created a training series using his story. And soldiers, especially young black officers, began saying it aloud like a reminder to themselves, "Walk like the ground is yours." Marcus heard about these things secondhand. He smiled when Sheila showed him the clips, but he didn't chase the spotlight. He never had. Because legacy isn't what people say when you walk in the room, it's what they carry when you're gone. One evening, he sat alone outside quarters, watching the sun fall behind the pines. The hum of insects, the faint sound of cadence from a distance, the world slowing. He thought of his father, a Vietnam vet. Spat on in uniform, told to go home to a country that never saw him. His voice came back in memory. "Hold your fire, son. It burns brighter that way." Marcus never forgot that. The cuffs, the stare, the stillness. They didn't break him. They carved something deeper. And so if you're still listening now, if this story moved you, carry it, share it. Not because Marcus needed the spotlight, but because the next time someone like him stands alone, the world shouldn't stay silent. Because heroes don't always march. Sometimes they wait and teach the world to finally see. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't fight fire with fire. He stood still and let the truth do the burning. In a world where uniforms can't always protect you, where medals mean less than the color of your skin, he reminded us, dignity is not a costume, it's a choice. And sometimes the most powerful act of resistance is to not bend. Comment 1. If you've ever been judged before being understood, for how you looked, where you came from, or what they thought you couldn't be. Comment 2 if you believe true power doesn't shout. It stands still, like Marcus did. And if this story made you pause, made you feel something, subscribe. We're just getting started. There are more truths to tell, and more voices that deserve to be heard.